Well, dang. It didn't seem like too long ago. Actually, I think it was my last video where we were talking about the Mega Charizard XEX, the Tag 10, the Pristine Tag 10, selling more than a PSA 10 counterpart. And now today we have a CGC. Well, now we're going to go ahead and talk about a CGC Pristine 10 Neo Genesis Lugia selling more than a PSA 10 counterpart, which is insane. It's double the price. I mean, a PSA 10 Neo Genesis Lugia is going for around $48,000, while the CGC Pristine 10 just went for over 100K. That's insane, honestly. But what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean for the hobby? What does that mean for tag, especially for tag graders, tag collectors, or new people who are jumping into the hobby and they're thinking about grading their cards? And right now, it seems like a very interesting time because the standard quo or the standard for graded cards is PSA. PSA has the liquidity. PSA has the turnaround times, the long turnaround times, but it has the liquidity. If you have it in your collection, you can move it way easier than all the other slabs, right? Even though the slab is ugly, it's recognizable around the world, and it has like a little bit of the buyer's trust, and like buyers as in people not necessarily grading with them, but people who buy graded cards for their collection, they have their trust. But what does that mean for the hobby long term? So, I mean, we're going to go ahead and talk about it. So, I don't want to go ahead and diminish CGC for this. Congratulations, CGC, for real. The Pristine 10 exploits another thing. It will kind of keeps exploiting the biggest issue with PSA. And that's going to be that PSA doesn't offer a higher grade than 10. And it doesn't seem, right now, and it seems that companies that have a higher grade than a 10, whether if it's a Tag Pristine 10, a CGC Pristine 10, or even the Black Label 10, those cards will sell for more than PSA 10s. Makes sense. They're graded harder, whether if it's subjectively or objectively with AI. Those cards are graded harder than your standard PSA 10 cards, so therefore the premium of those cards should be higher than your PSA 10s. But what does that mean for the hobby? Well, to me, even though like I'm super happy that the CGC Pristine 10 went for like a huge price, here's the real reality that tag collectors, tag graders have to accept. As much as we believe that tag offers a better product because of their transparency of their data and how we can see maybe that population does matter in some of these cards, the consumer base, most of the people out there are going to vending shows, going to card shops, ripping packs and stuff like that. Some of them will go ahead and grade with PSA or CGC for the subjectiveness of the hobby, right? They might prefer the subjective side of the hobby rather than the objective, harder, stricter grading that tag offers. And for the most part, it's like, honestly, at this point, like it's not to surprise you, right? But like everyone wants a participation ribbon. Anyone who spends a good amount of money in this hobby, whenever they're going to go ahead and grade their cards, they want to get rewarded with a 10. And their best odds of getting a 10, it's going to be going through PSA or CGC. And as much as I would go ahead and still promote or tell new collectors jumping into the hobby, grade with tag for other reasons, but the biggest important, get your information. So if you're going to be in this hobby long term, right? If you're going to be in this hobby long term and you're considering of grading cards, which I think anyone in this hobby for collecting should really consider about, because we're probably in the brick of one of the most populated, one of the most printed eras that we're ever going to get in the Pokemon hobby. Because we have to think about it. As of right now, we're experiencing one of the biggest bear runs that we've ever seen in Pokemon, in the TCG, right? And it's been going for now, I guess, like a year and a half, which is pretty insane. We might have experienced a little bit of a bear market, a little bit of a cooling down or readjustment in the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, but it seems like things are picking up all over again. Regardless, during the time that things kind of cooled down, it wasn't any easier getting product at retail price. We're still having those situations where every single day that you go to a big retail company, big retail store, Target, Walmart, etc., you're not going to find Pokemon on shelves. Meaning it's still getting sold out by either collectors, collectors are buying out, casuals are buying it out, or scalpers. It's still being outsourced. Like you can't find it out there. We're going to get a printing company in the latter portion of 2027. And it seems like Pokemon is working with another company to get like distribution rights directly from the printing facility, cutting out all the other middlemen, which I think is going to be fantastic for the hobby. Because at the end of the day, Pokemon wants their product to hit the shelves. They want people to go ahead and buy it from them directly because that's where they're going to get the most profit. That's where they're going to get their money's worth, right? And they just want to probably maintain like a good image as a company, making sure that the product is easily available for everyone, all ages. But that's going to lead to the population of some of these cards going through the roof. We already talked about how we think it's insane that the Mega Charizard X EX card is one of the most printed chase cards, most populated chase cards that you can get. And it has a pretty good gem rate in tag, giving you a 53% chance of getting that card as a 10. And the PSA side is a little bit different, but nonetheless, these are regular cards, modern day cards that you can go ahead and pull now. And if they're graded as a 10, you could be selling them for upwards of thousands of dollars, which is insane. It's not something that you could have done in this hobby a couple years ago. Things that we're seeing now are crazy. But nonetheless, we're going to get a printing facility, a more direct distribution center or path from the Pokemon company to the Western US retailers. So expect more product to eventually hit the shelves. So what does that mean? Well, if more product hits the shelves, more people are into the hobby, and the hobby really doesn't die down. I do think that raw cards, while they're still extremely liquid for some of the Pokemon and making card shows and this ecosystem very viable, that people down the road, real collectors, are going to be gravitating to graded cards. That's why graded cards have been exploding as much as they have, right? Because you can be a little bit more selective on the Pokemon cards that you want, even though you have to pay a premium. But at the same time, whenever you're buying a card, you want the best possible copy of that card. I mean, I go with my friends to different vending shows, and we are looking for the best copy of that card. Even if we have, like, it might take a little bit of time, and vendors, you have to get used to it, right? Or you're probably already used to it by now. But people are asking for that card and seeing if it's gradable or not, because you want the best copy. So people will look hard for those cards. They're going to go ahead and send them for grading, and there's going to be a big upside. But the better product, which I still strongly believe is tagged due to the data that it provides. Because we get into the argument. The last people, I had a bunch of people go ahead and comment in my last video saying that grading is a scam. And to some extent, I would argue and agree with you. I would say that subjective grading, like PSA and CGC, is a scam. Because you do have a rubric, don't get me wrong, you do have a rubric, you have guidelines of what makes a card a 10, right? Or gets the grade that they do. You know, whenever you pulled a raw card from a pack, that raw card can fall anywhere of the spectrum of a 1 to a 10, regardless of the grading company, right? There's certain curricular or certain characteristics that you're looking for that card that can fall within that grade, or the, you know, its pristine condition. Subjective grading, while there is rules and guidelines, they don't give you all the information back, or not every single company gives you the information back of why that card got that grade, right? Well, you might disagree with the grading company. At the end of the day, you are paying money to this grading company to tell you, hey, this card looks like it's in this condition, so therefore in this condition it might sell around this price, right? That does kind of sound a little bit of a scam. I don't think it's a scam whenever you're grading your cards with AI, because all the information is being given to you. You can also look at the population of the card and compare your card, your copy of that card, with other collectors' cards and see why. I think that's why I really do enjoy the Pristine 10 numbering system. I know it's a point of 1 to 1,000, right? But at the end of the day, a real collector, a true collector, will pay a premium, as you guys are seeing it, as we're talking about the CGC Pristine 10 Lugia or the Mega Charizard XEX Pristine 10. People will pay a premium to have the 10th 10, the most pristine 10 of that copy. There's people out there, maybe you won't, and that's completely fine. That is respectable. But there's people out there who that's what they find entertainment in. That's what they like. They want to spend money. They're going to spend money. They want to have something that's better than yours. That's how humans have always acted. That's what drives a lot of humans. They want to show off something that's better than yours. So people will pay that premium to have the best copy of a card. CGC Pristine 10s, Tag 10s, Beckett Black Label 10s. You know, that's the reason why these cards, these pristine black labels, whatever, it's going to go more than PSA. That's what I see Tag staying in this business long term, because we're going to receive a massive influx of new cards being printed from years to come. And if people are going to be collecting in this hobby, who are still going to be collecting, they're going to want the 10th 10s, and they're going to want that information to back it up. That's where I see Tag still maintaining a foothold, but people also want to get rewarded. Some people don't want to go with Tag because it's the hardest one, because some people can't take failure. They can't accept responsibility, accountability of why that card, you know, maybe they mishandled it, maybe they ripped it wrong, why that card is not the best available copy. So that's why they will go with subjective rating like CGC and PSA. Now, this got me thinking, well, as long as the hobby is hot, grading is always going to be a controversial subject. Right now, most of the conversations is, you know, PSA is getting a lot of bad rep. No one really takes CGC serious, and no one really, like, the new people want Tag to succeed, but older collectors or people who have a lot of money invested in graded cards personally don't want Tag to succeed, because a lot of their wealth or value is behind PSA. So another company overtaking that is really going to hurt them. There's also going to be companies, people who are going to be doing mass gradings, and they can't go ahead and grade with Tag, even though it is harder. So the gem rates are going to be lower. People don't want to send mass bulk submissions to Tag and get their cards 9s and 8s rather than 10s, because the outcome is going to be more predictable. Humans like to gamble, and whenever you're grading cards with CGC or PSA, you are still gambling. This is a double layer gambling addiction that we are experiencing in the hobby. People love to gamble. You can argue me all you want, but with the explosion of Kalshi or Polymarket, or even in the sense crypto or stocks, it is still a source of gambling, right? The odds are stacked against you succeeding. But from the moment that you buy a Pokemon card pack, that you rip it, you are gambling, because there's nothing that's guaranteed to you in that card of value, right? But you ended up pulling a chase card, potentially having a subjective value that we dictate, part of the gambling aspect, right? So you buying a Pokemon card and ripping it open is gambling. Now you're sending it to a grading company, and you can follow all the strict things that they have, the guidelines, the rules. Hey, this is what we're looking for, centering, edges, all this, blah, blah, blah. It's still a gamble. It's still not guaranteed, because your perception of a 10 might be completely different from another perception of another human being. Unfortunately, you are still gambling against another human being. And honestly, I don't think it's in the best interest of these companies to always giving you what you want, because then that's how they're going to end up losing trust. They want you to kind of suffer a little bit more and struggle. Now, with the subjective companies that don't use any AI to keep track of cards, they benefit from the resale culture, or the resale culture and the recracking culture. Some these population number of these cards are extremely high through the roofs, right? But it's because people are cracking the cards, resubmitting them, regrading them with these subjective companies, and hoping they can get a 10. They can get a lucky 10. Maybe they can increase their collection from a couple $100 to $1,000. You know, but that's a part of the gambling aspects. And these things in our economy keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and people see this as a hobby, as an investment, as a potential way of potentially getting lucky and making their money back a little bit more outside the traditional norm. Subjective grading companies is going to offer them a way to make money. Very rare, but a way to make money, add to their collection, that it's different, rather than you having to buckle up, tie your shoes, and go work a 9 to 5 or be an entrepreneur. That's why subjective companies won't fail, because whenever you're talking about AI grading, not only are they fighting other companies, they're fighting humans. Humans, you would think that we have a tendency of rewarding the best out there, but not necessarily. We reward the people who look the best for whatever reason. We make them celebrities, who might be good at one skill asset, who might be horrible people, but they're fantastic actors, or they can throw the ball really, really far, or they kick the ball with their legs really, really hard. You know, we reward that, but you know, it's not always the best who get rewarded. Now Tag has to fight other companies who have a longer foothold in the community or in the market. They have to fight people who might necessarily not choose the hardest way, because let's be honest, people don't like the hardest way. They don't like putting in the work. They like getting lucky and getting money out of it. So Tag is going to be fighting a lot. So I don't like, it's hard to say this, right? But I do see Tag maintaining a part in the market share, but mostly because there's going to be people who are going to be using AI as the tool that it is to make better informed decisions. Look, when it comes to PSA and CGC, I don't think that the market is big enough for two different companies, but I hope it is. Unfortunately, I think CGC has to do different things as a company to become more marketable and have better resale value, just as much as PSA. But as long as we have these subjective companies, you're going to have people who are going to be treating Pokemon as a gambling addiction and grading through them as a form of gambling. With Tag, it's going to be completely different. Because, follow me around. Follow me in this one. Let's say let's say Tag continues doing what it's doing. It keeps getting popularity with the new collectors, popularity with some content creators, popularity with the casual peoples because they like the way the slabs look, right? So they keep eating a little bit more and more and more of the market share. So they keep getting cards, they grade them with Tag, they get them back. They'll get some 10s, they might get a pristine 10, but most likely they might get some 9s and some 8s. Whenever you grade them with Tag and you get a 9 and an 8, then you know definitely that card is stuck as a 9 or as an 8. You can't regrade it with Tag, because if you do, regardless, if you change your name, you've changed the address, or you send it from another location, the system is smart enough to pick up that card and say, it's like, oh, we've already graded this card. It's not a new regrade, it's a reslab. So they're going to go ahead and slab it with the old cert number. Tag is consistent, but that's going to hurt them too, because there's going to be less submission to Tag, because they're not trying to, as consistent as the AI is. The first grade is their final grade. Now, other people are going to use this opportunity to grade with Tag first, because there's no upcharge. Remember, even if it's a chase card, there is no upcharge. You'll get it back. I'm like, okay, now it's a 9, but I think it can pass by as a CGC 10 or PSA 10. Then they'll go ahead and grade with PSA or CGC with the hopes of gambling. There's a thing again. In gambling, the fact that maybe the other grader, the human grader, can agree with them and give it that 10 label, doubling, tripling their value of that card overnight. Why? Because some other person thought, hey, this is a good copy too. And this is where I can see people saying grading is subject or is a scam. But there's a lot of things that tag is going to be fighting for. So as much as I want to go ahead and celebrate this pristine CGC tag, this pristine CGC 10 sale of the Neo Genesis Lugia for a record-setting amount of 100K for that card. As much as I want to celebrate that, we have to be transparent. We have to be clear as tag graders or as tag fanboys that this shows us or reinforces the fact that people will choose subjective grading because it's easier, because potentially they can make more money, and just for the most part that it's easier. You can manipulate it, you can exploit it, you can make money out of exploiting a system, exploiting people, and that's what's going to happen. Not so much with tag, but I do see a big premium or big area for tag collectors. I do see potentially tag or pristine tag 10s overtaking Beckett Black Label 10s, because it's not part of the PSA ecosphere. Man, sometimes I should not try to sound smart, just say words. Ecosystem, there you go. PSA's ecosystem. Because Beckett is part of the PSA's ecosystem as long as it's controlled by the same company. Tag is completely independent. Tag is way harder to get a pristine 10. Why? Because you're fighting a machine, you're fighting a program, you're not fighting other people's. So I do see tag being the premier of high value grading in the future for high cards, and they're gonna have an extremely amount of money behind them. Well, I think Beckett is probably gonna lose some of that luster. I think CGC might lose a little bit of that last luster, but a lot of people don't pursue CGC. And it's true. A year and a half into this hobby of this explosion, I mean, CGC slabs do sell, but how often do you see them at big conventions? How often are they in your local conventions? How often do you see content creators, vendors really moving CGC slabs? You really don't. The only thing that we ever really see is PSA and Beckett. Hopefully in the future we see a little bit more of tag content creators, tag vendors moving some of their slabs in order to get a little bit more of that mainstream field. But please understand that this is going to be a long process. We're probably going to have to experience a crash where people don't necessarily want these Pokemon cards, this mass-produced Pokemon cards, and the only Pokemon cards that they do want is going to be the mintiest copies, and the ones they're going to go after are going to be like tag 10s or pristine 10s. But we're going to have to wait for a market crash of the Pokemon hobby, not the graded hobby, of the Pokemon hobby, for more collectors to start really appreciating tag. But those are some of my thoughts. That's how I took the sale of this CGC Neo Genesis, as that's the message that I took from it. If you guys agree or disagree, just drop a comment. If you guys hate PSA, just drop that. PSA, one of the things I want to start is like PSA release the files. Why my cards, hashtag PSA release the files. Be more transparent. That's the only thing that I'm looking for, want from PSA moving in the future. Until then, I'm not going to be grading with PSA. I can't. Will I buy some PSA slabs? Absolutely. Why? Well, there's some vintage cards stuck behind the PSA labels that I would want in for my collection. But I buy them with the intent of cracking them and then regrading them. But if you're going to be into the hobby, if you're new into the hobby or collecting to the hobby, or you really want to get into it, I would strongly consider grading with tag first before you grade with PSA, because at least the card that you're sending to PSA or CGC, if there's going to be stuck there for half a year or whatever, at least that you're sending a good copy, that the AI system telling you, hey, this is a great card, so it should come back as a PSA 10. And if it comes back as a PSA 9, then that PSA is screwing you over, right? Because there's no reason why subjective grading should be harder than objective AI grading. I'm sorry, there's no way. This is going to be consistent. PSA, CGC is not going to be consistent because you're not always going to get the same grader. It's going to be different graders, different times. So I'm sorry, right? But that's going to be all for today. I mean, if you guys like this content, hey, please consider like and following. Like I don't want to be the guy that you want to listen to for good news. I want to be the guy that you listen to as you're going home after a long day. Then maybe you just want to connect, think about different things, and you want to zone in and zone out. Outside from that, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.